Hello folks, welcome to El Canal Channel Jose. Today we're going to show you how to replace a fuel pump on a 95 to a 99 or 98 Toyota Tercel, and we'll show you the steps. To access the fuel pump on a 95 to a 98 Toyota Tercel, we have to remove the bottom piece of the seat, and then we have to lift it, and it's hooked with these tabs here, and on the other side there's another one. So you lift it, and then the cover for the access panel or the access to the fuel pump is right below, right here. So we get the seat out. So now that we have our seat pulled out, we're gonna start lifting this cover, this plate, and it's glued down to the metal. So we're gonna use a scraper slowly and lift it off, and be careful not to pull it too far because your wires. Once you have undone the wire, you can undo this from this little plate, and then you can remove it, pass it through the hole of the sheet metal, and that way it makes things easier to access the fuel pump. Move your cover plate. This is your access panel. There's some screws that are holding this plate or this cover in towards the gas tank. So you want to clean this out really good, because all this trash has to go away before we open this fuel tank, because there's the fuel tank access panel. This is it. This is where the fuel pump is, connect everything. So you want to clean this out before we get into there. So now that we have cleaned around, we have 8 Phillips screws holding the plate. There's a gas tank, so we got to take them all out. Be careful with your electricals. So to get these screws off, you got two options. You can use a 8mm socket, or you can use a Phillips screwdriver. I always rather go with the socket because it's more secure, because the Phillips always tend to just screw up the head of the screw. So I go with the socket, 8mm. And I'm gonna give you advice or a tip that once you're taking these screws off the plate, make sure you don't drop them. Don't drop them in here, because you're gonna end up probably with a few screws missing, and then there's a space between the tank and the sheet metal. So you wanna be careful not dropping these screws in there when you're taking them off. Be careful. Do one by one. So that's a tip I can give you. So at this point, folks, we have removed all the screws that hold the cover or this plate towards the gas tank. So we want to bring that off the gas tank, but we want to be careful, because you don't want to pull, and you want to feel what's going on. So slowly work yourself into it. Don't rush it. So we have to undo this hose and this hose and this hose from the unit, so we can pull it straight up. So we undo this rubber hose, this one, and want to make sure you want to mark this one and this one to know which one was and which tubing, or just put a marking in one, so that way you know that that one goes there and the other one without the marking goes in the other one. And gotta undo this one too. So one advice I can give you, folks, is that before you start removing your screws, I just went through this. So if you remove all your screws, put about 4 of them, hold the plate down, tighten it down, and then start removing your clamps, and then start getting some pliers and loosen the hose from the tubing, because it might be stuck there. So because years of use and never been pulled. So you want to loosen your hoses, and that way when you have this plate tied down, the plate doesn't move around when you're undoing the hoses. So that's one tip I can give you that you want to do before you start taking the plate out. To undo your hoses first. This clamp, I push it down towards the hose, but this one that was here, I push it and pull it up to the plate. So because it's kind of hidden in there, so I won't be able to grab it really good. So I undid it and brought it up. So one tip, guys, I can give you about that too. So to loosen this, we need a three-quarter wrench, and we need to get a tubing wrench for this, which is a 14 millimeter, but using channel locks. And by using channel locks, you might damage the nut, the tubing nut like this. So I recommend using tubing wrenches for this. It's a 3/4 and a 14 millimeter. So this is the wrenches that I was telling you guys. Most of you guys already know the tubing wrenches, and these are for the hollow nuts or fittings for the hydraulics, brake lines, fuel lines. This is what we use. And for this video, we didn't have this tool, but I want to expose that you gotta use this if you got it, because these will keep the shape of the nut and won't round out the body, and it's easier to take off. These ones are very helpful. If you don't have a set, get yourself a set, because this is gonna save you a lot of headaches and a lot of time. Because sometimes the open wrench might be good, but when you get to a tubing side, you need these wrenches to get you the job done the right way, and so you don't damage the fittings. So this is what I was talking about, not the open wrenches, but the tubing wrenches. And these are it. I like this set because this has a regular wrench, open wrench, and the same opening at the other tubing side is a 14 millimeter, so you can use both sides for a 14 millimeter. And the one that spins is this one. This one you gotta hold it solid. As you can see, this is the one you gotta spin off of this. So you hold that solid and you gotta spin this off. And it helps to have the plate in place while you're doing this, so it helps you control maneuver. So you just gotta spin, and you don't have to work the weight of the plate once it's loose. So that's why you gotta undo this before you remove the plate or have it loose. So at this point we have removed the plate, and we have undone this hose and this hose, but we haven't undone this. So what we did is that we removed the plate and we move it a little bit towards the back, so it gives us a point so we can get the channel locks or the pliers in there to loosen it and slide it off the tubing. We have undone all the hoses and no screws, so we pull the unit out. So now here is the whole fuel unit. We got a floater, the unit that sends a signal to the dash, the fuel pump, the strainer, and we have to, if we want to replace the fuel pump, this is how we will get it off right here. So we'll undo this little hose, unplug it, and take it off. So to change the fuel pump, all you have to do is right in the bottom, you gotta slide it off the grooves like this. It's easy, not much effort, but this thing is the shock absorbent for the vibration, needs to be there when you put the new fuel pump. So you take this off, so it's off the bottom. All you have to do is now you gotta undo this hose from the fuel pump and the connection, and then you have the fuel pump completely off the unit. Explain why there's two tubings. So this is the main one. This is where the fuel pump sends the fuel to the engine. This is for the vapors, and this one is for the return from the engine. In the previous video I explained it that on the fuel injection system, that when the pressure is built in the engine and it's too much pressure for the fuel pump, so it doesn't burn itself out, so there's always a flow. So the fuel pump sends the fuel, gets to the engine, and the fuel regulator, if it starts feeling that there's too much pressure, it sends it back through this tubing, which falls right in here, and it comes in right next to the fuel pump again. So that's why there's 3 ports. I wanted to explain that. So there's vapors, fuel, return line to the fuel tank from the fuel pump, so the pressure doesn't build up too much in the system. So that's why there's this guy coming back to the tank. We're ready to put our fuel pump in, so what we do is slide it into this hose, or whatever's easier. Slide it into the hose first, and then put the shock absorber, and then slide it into this. The reason of this base is because if it was just hanging with its weight to this hose, and it slowly, the vibration will be sliding out, it will be sliding out, and eventually will slide out. That the only thing that was holding the fuel pump towards this will be this connector, but the fuel will be going nowhere except for just absorbing it and shooting it out through this port. And that's why this base is there for a reason, to hold the fuel pump from sliding out of this hose. Pushing, and then we slide it right into the groove, back into the unit. So I would recommend that if you have a strainer and you have never replaced it, replace it, and if it doesn't have it, put it on, because that's gonna help the life of the fuel pump, because all the crap from the fuel tank won't get sucked into this, and that helps a lot. So we have this fuel pump ready to go back into the tank. We just gotta put that clamp back on down here. Before we slide this fuel pump unit into the tank, is that you want to make sure that this fuel pump is touching down the bracket completely, so there's no vibration, it will slide out. So you want to slide it from here down, so it's completely touching the base. This is how it has to be, really tight. It has the bushing for the vibration, and the bottom is connected, the clamps are on, and the strainer is there, all in one piece. So we're ready to put this unit back in place. And before we put the fuel pump right in, I want to show you how the tank is from the inside. See all that crap in the bottom? You see, it's like a plate surrounding the fuel pump, keeping the fuel from around the fuel pump from splashing away. To put the fuel unit back in, what you do is you guide the float first, followed by the strainer, and then you start fitting it slowly. Then you turn it and slowly guide it in place. So now that we have all the unit back in the tank, what we can do is, before we start putting the screws, we can start sliding our hoses right into the tubings, and that way it gives us movement to slide them in. So then we start, and then after that we start screwing down the plate into the tank. One tip I can give you is that before you start sliding your hoses back in, put some WD-40 in there, and then you can slide the hoses easy. And the WD-40, what it will do is it's gonna get washed with the fuel, and it's not gonna affect the system. So it's just a little bit, it's just outside, so that way the hose can slide into the metal easier, and you're not fighting it. So now, once you put your hoses back into the tubing, put your clamps on. Make sure you put your clamps back on, tighten these, and then once that's done, we'll bolt down our cover. So we start putting our screws back in, or bolts. Put them by hand, that way you don't drop them one by one. Now that we have put them all our screws in, we tighten them, and what we do is we tighten one side, we go to the other side, the opposite, we tighten it, we do cross, so we tighten the plate evenly. And once you tighten it, make sure they're snug, good. So just by hand, I use a small ratchet, and once we're done with that, we are back. We're ready to connect our electronics. And this is the gasket that is around the cap that covers the seals, the cap, the plate, into the gas tank. This is it. It's just a rubber piece. So at this point, we pass our wire connector through this hole in the plate, and then we plug it in, and then we put our plate back in place. At this point, we have put everything back, connector, the plate, and everything. So we just put our seat right back where it was. And there it is. This is how you replace a fuel pump on a 95 to a 98 or 99 Toyota Tercel. And well, folks, hopefully this video was helpful. And the 91 to a 94 Toyota Tercel have that fuel pump in the same location. They're about the same. So for the 91 to a 99 or 98 Toyota Tercel, it's about the same system. So hopefully this video was useful, and we'll see you soon with more videos here en el canal Echano Jose.